welcome to the World Happiness Festival. We're exploring positive education and mindfulness in education. And it's my very deep honor and pleasure to speak with Vinh this morning. Thor has a PhD in education, and he is founder of the Eurasia Learning Institute for Happiness and Wellbeing. He was the former director of the Gross National Happiness Program in Bhutan. And he was also the former director of learning and development at the International Red Cross. He's also a writer and a lecturer and supports many programs in several countries around the world. So welcome to the World Happiness Festival.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It really is our pleasure, our privilege. And I wonder maybe we'll start with just the subject of happiness. You have such a deep background in extreme experiences of human conditions, of suffering and experiences of war. Can you share a little bit about how this led you to the path of happiness?
Yes, as you have mentioned, I have been the Director of Learning and Development at the International Committee of the Red Cross for a number of years. And this meant that I spent quite a lot of time in the war zones and conflict areas all over the world. And witnessing a lot of suffering really made me reflect on why is it that we as human beings inflict so much suffering on one another and also on other sentient beings on the planet itself or herself. And it's really the experience of suffering that really focused my attention on the importance of cultivating happiness. So for me, true happiness can only be found if we are also willing to look at suffering. So it's not about escaping suffering, but it's really about transforming suffering into something positive.
Beautiful. I'm reminded of Thich Nhat Hanh's beautiful calligraphy, "No mud, no lotus." You made very good use of suffering. So can you share with us a little about some of your work in Vietnam with the Happy Schools program?
I think you also had an interview with my wife, Lissy, who told you about the development of our work in Vietnam that started really quite shortly after the end of the war. And seeing, again, it was really seeing the suffering, especially in this case of the children, and more specifically the children with special needs, or I prefer to say with special abilities, because it's really looking at different possibilities to manifest their humanness.
Oh.
And so that was really the starting point of our work, and that led to developing a lot of programs, and Lissy spoke about it, so I won't repeat that. But at a certain point, the education department of the province where we were working asked us if we would be willing to also implement some of the practices and the framework, educational framework that we have developed for special education in the context of general education. So Vietnam, like most Asian countries, has a colonial past, and a lot of the educational system is an inheritance of the colonial past. It's also a socialist country or a communist country. So the education is very much framed by the Ministry of Education, and it has its limits. And one of the insights that really triggered my specific interest in trying to bring happiness in the schools of Vietnam was the fact that UNESCO, sort of part of the United Nations organization that works in the field of education, UNESCO Southeast Asia, based in Bangkok, made an assessment of the educational systems in Asia. And it turned out that according to PISA, so which is like the international comparison of educational system worldwide. So a lot of Southeast Asian countries have very high PISA academic grades, or they score very high in PISA, like Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and so on and so forth. And even Vietnam has pretty high PISA scores. But at the same time, the UNESCO observed that the well-being of adolescents in these countries was not very good. So on one hand, the goal of educational systems usually is to get very high academic marks. On the other hand, you see that those countries who manage to get these high marks also have a lot of problems with their youth. So there's no correlation between academic achievement and well-being. Mm-hmm. So it led the UNESCO to reflect what would it need for schools to improve the well-being and the happiness of the kids. So I used this report as a kind of a argument, if you want, to tell to the education department. You see, even the UNESCO really emphasizes that we should not only be looking at academic performance, but also really at the happiness and well-being of the young people, children and young people. And I offered to create a program that would focus on happiness and well-being. And so the education department agreed, and we signed a memorandum of understanding with them. And 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we launched the program. And this program has 3 main components. It's a teacher training program, because we believe that the teachers need to embody the qualities that they want to implement in the classrooms and be role models for the kids. So it's 3 modules. Each module is 3 days long, and it takes about 9 months to implement it. So they do 1 module, then they implement it in the classroom, and they come back, and so on and so forth. So the first module is called self-care. So self-care is about really cultivating mindfulness, cultivating emotional awareness, cultivating the ability to deal with difficult emotions, but also to cultivate very intentionally positive emotions, such as gratitude, kindness, compassion, things like that, contentment. So we now have a lot of data from scientific research that shows that there's a very strong correlation between cultivating these positive attitudes and the overall well-being and happiness. So that's module 1. Really, first we start with mindfulness, because you cannot really become aware of your emotions if you don't have the ability to observe inwardly what happens in your mind and in your heart and so on. And then really cultivating positive emotions and dealing with negative or painful emotions, how to deal with anger, with jealousy, with sadness, with depression, and so on. So for 3 days, we practice very intensely with the teachers, and then they go back to their classroom and we support them in implementing that. So out of their own experience, we encourage them to develop their own exercises, so that it's not just something that is mechanically sort of transferred, but it's really, we encourage them to be creative, and because they know their kids, they have the experience, they know their context. So we don't want to impose something from outside. We want them to find the right way to implement it. Mm-hmm. So that's the first module. Then the second module is care for others and society. That's a lot about cultivating social skills, how to create good relationships, developing deep listening, developing empathy. How do we perceive other people's feelings and emotions? How do we deal with other people's feelings and emotion? How do we create the classroom as a community, the classroom as a sangha, the school as a sangha? And there we include also parents. So it's teachers, parents, and students creating the whole school community around these themes of community building, trust building, and teaching the kids the importance of positive human relationships based on trust, based on friendship, based on kindness, based on generosity, based on gratitude. So we have a lot of practical exercises. And so again, then after these 3 days, the teachers implement it in the classrooms, and our team then comes regularly to the school to support them in the implementation, give feedback. And then what we do is that we ask the teachers to write a reflective journal. So what have they experienced, what went well, what was difficult, what are the resources they found, what are the exercises that they invented, and so on and so forth. And based on that, we created a workbook. So we wrote the curriculum, and they receive a curriculum, but they write themselves the workbook. I mean, we collect from all the teachers. We have hundreds of teachers taking part of the program, and many thousands of kids have been impacted. And then so the teachers write the workbook, and the kids illustrate with nice drawings and like that. So it's really their own. That doesn't come from outside. And the third module is taking care of the environment and the planet. And it's about learning about our interdependence with the environment, feeling responsible for the environment, and creating new initiatives how to better take care of the environment. And this module is very much student-centered. So we really encourage the teachers to have their children, their students, come up with projects, and they're there to support them, not to lead them, but to support them. And it's amazing to see how many projects the young people, even young children and young people came up with. Like, for instance, in one primary school, the kids came up with the idea that they realized that most of them bring their snacks from home in plastic bags, or their lunch and so on. And so they realized, after having seen a film on the impact of plastic on wildlife, especially birds, seabirds, they decided to stop using plastic, and they created their own bags. They made bags, and then painted the bags and distributed the bags to the whole school community, and now they don't use plastic bags anymore. So that's just one of the many examples. Another example was that behind one school, there was a kind of a small piece of land that was not used because it was between the wall of the compound and the wall of the school. So it was maybe 3 meters wide and quite long as the building. But nothing happened there, so it was always full of trash and so on. And so they cleaned it, and they planted trees, and they made little sculptures and artworks, and they created a mindful walking path there. So every morning another class can go there before school and do mindful walking before entering the class, or during lunch break and things like that. So that's just 2 examples among many examples that were implemented. And our idea is that self-care, care for others, and care for the planet is not 3 different things. It really belongs together. So that's really about empowering the teachers and the children how to feel this threefold connectedness, connected to oneself, to one's deepest value, highest ideals, best potential, connected to others through love and understanding, and connected to the planet by feeling that we are part of the planet, that it's our mother, that we, as the children, as her children, we need to take good care of our mother. And because Vietnamese is a society where respect for parents is still very strong, the image of the earth as a mother has been very powerful for the children, so the idea to respect and love one's mother is very present and can very easily be applied to the planet.
Yeah, it's so inspiring. And when in wake up schools, when we work with teachers, often teachers come to a retreat with a real eagerness to learn something, to pass it along as quickly as possible. And for us, we also say embodiment is the first, that we just encourage teachers to put down a notebook and not to have a learning objective or a deliverable outcome, but to learn to rest in their bodies and take care of themselves. And I wonder, could you share a little about the effect for you of seeing teachers? Like, what impact do you see that for when a teacher learns to embody their presence and to take care of whatever is arising in them?
Again, there would be a lot of examples to give. So we have usually groups about 150 teachers at a time that go through the training. So the first thing is that the training takes place in our community, and Lizzie spoke about our community, Peaceful Bamboo Family. And the first experience is that when they come to our community, they have the experience of a place where these values or these practices are embodied already. So it makes it much more easy for them, because it's not just like theories or ideas, but it's really, they see it implemented, they see it on a daily basis. So the workshops are retreat-like, very similar to what you would experience in a Plum Village community. We begin with mindful walking, then we have mindful sitting, then we have Q&A from the previous day, then we present the theme of the day, and then we practice the theme of the day. So we have a lot of practice. Then the teachers sit together according to age groups and start to reflect. So what would it mean if I have 8-year-old or 15 years old? It's very different, so we implement it, and so on. And so it was interesting that usually the first feedback is the teacher saying, I've implemented it at home, and it had an impact in my family. So now, I had maybe a difficult relationship with my teenage daughter or son, or with my in-laws or whatever. And, since I've been practicing these, various practices, I noticed that at home, it has made a difference with my husband or with my wife or with my in-laws or with my own children. And I think that's the very convincing moment, that they feel, wow, it makes a change in my personal life. And therefore, if I implement it in my classroom, it will definitely also have an impact. So that really what motivates the teacher. The second thing is that we encourage teachers to have practice circles within the schools, so that once the workshop is over, it's not something that is finished, but they have two things. We visit them regularly in the classrooms and give them support, and then we facilitate practice circles, so that each school has their own practice circle. And then we have also larger practice circle, only maybe once a month or so, where teachers from several schools will gather together, so that they can share experiences, challenges, and so on. We also have a parents' evenings, where we invite parents to ask them if they've noticed any changes. And that's been always very moving. For instance, one mother was reporting her 13-year-old son came back home and said, Mother, is there anything I can do to help you? And the mother thought, oh, he must have done something terrible. Maybe he had a very bad mark at school and he's trying to, to get around his punishment. She asked, so what have you done? So, oh, I've done nothing. I just want to help you because, and then he told about this, the class on kindness, And then the mother was moved to tears, And another mother shared, oh, I realized that I have to do something on myself. I have to change myself if I want to change my kids, Or so our schools are very normal schools, and they are spread around the city. And so some are in very like poor areas or more like working class areas. So I was in one of those schools that was in a relatively poor area. And the father was a cyclo driver. So cyclo is like rickshaw, you know, with a bicycle, and then he has a bicycle, and then you have people in the back, or you know, stuff in the back that you. So it's really it's a job for people who have a very little qualification, and they are very badly paid. So anyway, a father was there, and he was a cyclo driver, and of course the whole evening he didn't dare to open his mouth because there were teachers, and for him teachers are like very respectable, very highly educated people. He probably stopped school when he was very young or something, so he couldn't really dare to open his mouth. But at the end of the evening, he came up to me and he smiled and he hugged me, and he couldn't say a thing, but he just hugged me, and that was one of those moments where you feel, well, that's exactly because of that I do this job. For moments like that,
Yeah.
And also we had many teachers, telling us, for instance, one teacher told me, I became a teacher like 20 years ago because I love kids and I wanted to make a difference. And, after 20 years, I completely forgot why I had become a teacher in the first place, because it's just a daily routine and so much pressure and so on. And now I remembered why I had become a teacher. Yeah, so these are the kinds of testimonies. And we have also many testimonies from children themselves. So, for instance, we introduced these sharing circles in the school. So, quality class time, we call that, where the children can really share from their heart, whatever happens. So maybe two little story. One was a little boy. He never did his homework. So he got a lot of, punishment, and he got scolded, and it didn't improve. And the teacher wrote it to the parents, so he also got scolded at home, and it didn't improve. And then when we introduced the quality class time, the sharing from the heart moments, the little boy was able to share that actually his parents are in a divorce, and there's a lot of fighting at home, and it's a lot of screaming, and when he gets home, the only thing he can do is put a pillow on his head because it's too painful, and so he cannot do his homework. And after he could share, and of course the teacher didn't know that, and after he was able to share that, then the teacher just organized for him to stay like maybe half an hour or 45 minutes in school after the end of school, so he could do his homework at school, and the problem was solved. Or I sat in a sharing from the heart circle with teenagers, and a young girl, maybe 15, 16. She had never seen me before because I'm not the one going into the classes. It's my colleagues that go into classes. And then she said that, what should one do when one feels life is not worth living anymore? And it was so incredibly touching to see that this young girl, was able to share really from her heart something. I don't know exactly what was she, if it was a heartbreak or maybe problems with the parents. Mm-hmm. The mere fact that she was able to share that, and then I felt that her classmates, really gave her a lot of, support, and and everybody was really open to listen without judging and without giving too much advice, but really just holding her, and I felt, we don't really know, but maybe we saved a life, or at least, we definitely probably enabled her to, go through this difficult moment, feeling that she has support from friends, mm-hmm. teachers, and so on. So there's so many examples like that, that really make it worthwhile.
Oh, yeah. And if not her life, then someone else's life who was in the circle. I think that those having the ability to be in community and really belong and share from your heart, it's a gift for your whole lifetime. And I think sometimes years later, it just pops up that a child remembers being deeply accepted, and then they're able to accept someone, or they're able to take care of their suffering when it comes up It's tremendous. Yeah, thank you so much. And your emphasis on community, you clearly from the very beginning of teachers coming in, involving parents, involving the children, you create a society, a little community there, arranged around kindness and authenticity and openness. Can you speak to us a little about the importance of community? Because I think sometimes we come to a mindfulness course for very individual reasons, come for our own personal, we want tools to take care of ourselves, or we think, oh, this is a good tool for my classroom that will help learning outcomes. So can you share a little about the importance of being on a path together?
Sure. So there are different aspects. One aspect is that we also know from a lot of research data that one of the fundamental needs of children, but actually this continues throughout our life, is a twofold. One is emotional security, so that we feel we have people that we can trust and that trust us. And this emotional security is a real foundation for our life. And the second dimension is social acceptance. So as a human being, we need to feel accepted, to be part of a social body, of a community of some kind. And we need to know that if we go through a difficult time, people will be there for us. And on the other hand, if any member of this community has problems, I am willing to step in and go out of my way to support them. So we can see that emotional security and social acceptance are very, very closely related. The difference between the two is that in social acceptance, one must also have the feeling that I can make a meaningful contribution. So a lot of the feeling of a community is not only a sense of belonging, it's also a sense that I'm an active part in my community. I make a difference. My contribution is valued, and there's opportunity for me to make a contribution. So I think we know from research that these two factors, so emotional security and community belonging, a sense of belonging to a community, play a very important role in during the process of growing up and maturing of children and young people, so that emotional learning can never be only about myself. It's about relationship building. Also, because most of the strong emotion emerge between people. They're not so much in myself. There's really, sometimes because maybe I don't feel well in my body, and then I feel very tired or something. Yeah, of course, it happens. But our big emotional challenges are relational challenges. That's why, for instance, bullying in school is really something very, very serious that should be really taken very seriously. It can really lead to despair, and definitely also has a very negative impact on the ability to learn. So when we try to enhance community, a school situation, so it has to be a balance between empowering each person, each student, each teacher, and hopefully also many parents, to learn to take good care of themselves, dealing with their own emotions, and so on and so forth. But very, very centrally so to create the kind of community that actually gives this emotional security and social acceptance that we all need for happiness and well-being. So we cannot separate really happiness from the social dimension. Happiness is not something that I can have for myself without others. It really is crucial because, for instance, we know that happiness is correlated with attitudes such as kindness and generosity and compassion and gratitude. And these are all attitudes that you can only cultivate with others. You cannot be kind only to yourself. You have to be kind to others. If you're generous, you're also generous to for others, and so on and so forth. So it's really this interpersonal relationship plays a very crucial role in enhancing the school well-being and the happiness of teachers, students, and families, really.
Beautiful, yeah. And can you speak a little about the principles of gross national happiness, which I understand they're embedded in this approach to being together and taking care, and you're also expanding farther afield with helping businesses to look at how they operate and to see if they can draw in these principles for their well-being.
So the fundamental idea of gross national happiness is that development has to serve a purpose, and that this purpose should be happiness for everyone and well-being for all life forms, so that the economy or economic growth or development or progress are not goals in themselves, but they are means. And the goal is to enhance happiness and well-being for all people and all life forms. So if you think in these terms in looking at society, then you ask yourself, so what are the elements that will enhance happiness and well-being in a society? And you realize that the economy is just one aspect, and by far not the only one, and not even the most important one. And economies should always be serving another purpose, which is increasing happiness and well-being. Likewise, if we look at schools, thinking of school as thinking that the main purpose of school is to pass exam and having high marks is similar to thinking that the goal of society is increasing the economy. Again, high marks and learning are important, but learning should serve a goal, which is not passing exams, but enabling each one to have a good life. And we know that to have a good life, academic results is only one part. It's helpful, but it's definitely not enough. And we also know for a lot of research data, including the grand research that was done by Harvard over like decades, that emotional intelligence, the quality of our relationship, plays an even higher role than our intellectual ability in order to have a good life and a successful life. So we try to share that in schools, if the only metric that you use is academic performance, then of course all the effort will be focused on academic learning. If you shift from only measuring academic performance to measuring happiness and well-being, then your scope of awareness is much larger, and you can also value students that are maybe not the brightest in math, but are maybe very good friends and very supportive of their friends and things like that. So likewise, when we work with the businesses, we remind the business that what makes the actual mission of the business, of any business, is to meet human needs. So we create products or services because we hope that these products or services will satisfy legitimate human needs. If profit is the only goal of the business, sooner or later the business will start to do unethical things because they will want to enhance their profit, even if it's detrimental to humans. Like, big farmers might increase the price of medicines in a way that is not legitimate, that is not ethical, because they only think of profit and not that the prime mission of a big pharma is to heal illnesses, sicknesses, right? But this is true for all businesses. So when we work with businesses, our goal is to ask first people, so what's the actual mission of your business? What are the needs that you are trying to fulfill through your activity? What products or services and so on? So if people focus on the actual mission that they have, then we ask them, so what are the good indicators to measure whether you are fulfilling this mission. And this goes beyond just economic measurement, like profit or things like that. And so we create new indicators, and that's one of the dimensions of gross national happiness, is to provide indicators that enable us to measure progress in a different way than just looking at profit. And then we support the businesses in creating also their community. And so what we call happiness skills, which is like, mindfulness and social emotional learning and all the things that I've also described in the schools, is also valid for a business. Because if employees feel happy at their workplace, if they feel motivated, if they feel that they make a difference, if they feel they are part of a community, if they feel that their work is meaningful for society, their engagement will be much, much stronger than if they just do it because they need a paycheck at the end of the month, but they don't really care in the end about the work. They just care about the paycheck. So that's a recipe for failure, because the engagement will just be what has to be the minimum. While if you do a work with your heart because you believe in it, then it will give a good direction to the company, because it will make sure that the company is on track, really fulfilling its true mission. And it will also have a positive impact on even on the economic development of the company, because they will have employees that are very committed, and they might also gain new customers, because in our time many customers will prefer a company that is ethical, that is sustainable, that treats their people well and has a good social impact, over a company that is ruthless and just trying to make a lot of profit, but has a negative impact on society and on the planet.
It's creating a whole new paradigm.
Exactly, it's a new development paradigm. Yeah. So when Bhutan first presented a GNH at the UN, it was called Happiness and Well-being Towards a New Development Paradigm. And so that's what we're trying to do, creating a new development paradigm. And I believe that the two strongest leverage points are education and business.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. And then for you, and maybe I'm conscious of your time with us today, so maybe I will finish with asking you about your own happiness. How do you keep your happiness well nourished? And you juggle many things and you travel a lot, and I'm sure there are initiatives that face challenge after challenge, and you keep going, and you seem a well-nourished person in terms of your well-being and happiness. How do you do that?
I think there are different dimensions. One dimension is to keep a very regular personal practice. So no matter what, in the morning I have 2 hours or 2.5 hours for myself, for my practice, or I do Qigong every morning, I meditate every morning, and I read some spiritual inspiring texts, or I write some poetry. So I have a very regular personal practice that is unwavering, that is not dependent on outer circumstances, and this for many years. The second thing is, we spoke about the quality of human relationship as a very strong determinant for happiness and well-being. So I am extremely blessed to have such a wonderful family, starting with a wonderful wife. You already met her. And of course, it's just a blessing to have her around. And we support each other very much. I also have beautiful children and grandchildren. And so the family is really a source of strength and energy. And we have such a wonderful Sangha. We have such a wonderful circle of young people. So it's very intergenerational. We have really people of all ages. And it's such a blessing at my age. I'm 69. That so many young people get interested in what we're doing and want to support us, engage with us, and so we have a very vibrant Sangha in Switzerland, in Vietnam, in Germany. So it's really an international Sangha, or community of practice and of work. So for us, the Sangha is not just practice; it's also we work together, we create projects together, and so on. So it's very, for me, it's really about bodhisattva action in the 21st century. So selfless action, getting trying to do, even if it's a modest contribution, but to make a contribution towards happiness and well-being for all. And the feeling that, you know, whatever I'm doing makes a difference or is meaningful, even if it's a humble or modest difference, but it does make a positive impact. And I observe that always again and again. I shared a few stories. You know, that really also gives me the energy and the joy to continue doing what I'm doing. And lastly, nature. Both Lizzie and I love being in nature, so we try every day to go either for a walk or be by the lake or walk in the mountains. And so really to get the energy from nature, from the trees, from the mountains, from the water is something that I find is very, very nourishing. So, yeah, can't complain. I think it's life.
They're ingredients for a very wholesome life. Very wholesome life. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time this morning and for all that you do in so many countries, touching thousands and thousands of people to help support their well-being.
Thank you.
Oh.